Hey guys, welcome to my series where I play every single Wii U game that has any kind of physical release here in North America. Hope you're ready for a lot of jank with game number 9, Rodea the Sky Soldier. Rodea the Sky Soldier was released on November 10th, 2015, developed by Kadokawa Games and published by NIS America. So I knew nothing about this game when I bought it. It looked interesting for the most part. The only major thing I did know about it was that it was the brainchild of Yuji Naka, the co-creator of Sonic. Now this information doesn't give me high hopes considering Naka's other brainchild was Balan Wonderworld, and that game sucked a donkey dick. Granted, this game is 5 years older than Balan, so let's not be too hasty here. Maybe this will end up being a good time. We open with Rodea avoiding giant mechs trying to find Princess Cecilia, who's being chased by a bunch of flying mecha sharks. Rodea finds her and gives chase. It's a pretty short opening. Tutorial time. So the way you move around in this game is mainly by flying around. You can walk, but most of the time you'll be in the air. At least that's what you think at first. The controls are pretty funky. Flying is a bit weird because you can only fly straight ahead or straight up. You have a reticle at the point where you want to fly, too, so the amount of freedom you have is very limited. You can press the B button to do a homing attack which will kill enemies and break open things. You can't stay in the air forever though because there's a flight gauge which will drain during flight and during your attack. If you run out, you'll fall straight down. In order to keep your flight gauge up, you need to land on the ground or kick off a wall. You can find these yellow crystals to act as emergency fuel just in case you run out mid-flight to save yourself, but they drain so fast. So the controls aren't bad per se, they take a while to get used to, but overall they're not the worst. They only feel bad because this game is botched up the ass mechanically, but we'll get into that later. Anyways, we find the princess who managed to steal the Key of Time. This key was going to be used by the Emperor of Naga to invade their current home of Garuda. They are then surrounded by a bunch of robots. Cecilia breaks the Key of Time into two halves and gives one half to Rodea. The key is useless if it's broken. Cecilia then teleports Rodea out of harm's way, leaving her to die, I guess. Rodea isn't happy about this, but Cecilia asks Rodea to keep a promise for her. Save Garuda. Rodea is transported to the desert, smashes his arm off in rage, and passes out. We then get a Star Wars-like text crawl of what led to this. 1,000 years ago, the Naga Empire faced a huge energy crisis. Their emperor, Gyardo, found a new energy source on the floating continent of Garuda. So Gyardo launched an invasion on Garuda to steal this energy. His daughter Cecilia hated this and prayed that Garuda would move out of reach ASAP. Gyardo wanted to use the Key of Time to connect both lands together, but Cecilia stole it in time and fled. So now here we are, 1,000 years later. I hope this plot makes sense so far. We are then awoken by another character, Ion. She informs us Rodea was buried in the desert and that she made him a new arm. Ion asks who he is, but Rodea has amnesia and can't remember anything. So I guess we gotta just fly around and wait till our memories come back. This game is broken up into 25 chapters, which sounds long, but each chapter is like a 10 to 20 minute level, so it's not a big epic thing like Xenoblade. So chapter 1 is another tutorial stage, showcasing how each level is going to play out. If I were to describe it, take nights into dreams and put it in a 3D space, and most of your movement consists of lightspeed dashing and homing attacks from Sonic. It sounds cool, but it certainly doesn't hold up to that. I guess the main feature of this stage is the lightspeed dash thing you can do with a line of crystals. Most of the time it works, but there were plenty of times where I would just disconnect from the trail and was left free falling. I don't know why it happens, but it happens a lot. This level isn't anything special to be honest, but it is a decent tutorial. At the end of this stage we meet Ion's grandfather. He's annoying as hell and I hate him. He's scared of Rodea because he thinks he's here to invade Garuda, even though it apparently failed all those years ago. But somehow a giant hologram of Gyardo appears and informs the inhabitants of Garuda that his full-scale invasion will begin now and floods the area in warships and enemies. Every 1,000 years, Garuda is surrounded by Kronos Towers, which was used by the Naga Empire to invade Garuda all those years ago. Jeez, Gyardo, you're dead. Why the hell do you care anymore? Chapter 2, the first real level I guess. We get introduced to our first enemies, which aren't too tough to kill I suppose. When you kill an enemy, they will drop parts which are used to upgrade Rodea on the map screen. This consists of health, damage, flight speed, and other little upgrades. Honestly, most of the upgrades are kinda worthless I feel, except for the obvious health and damage increases. Some are good, but you need to buy the crappy upgrades in order to get the good ones. We also get a new piece of gear. Every 5 levels or so, Ion will give Rodea a new tool to work with. This is probably the most useful out of all of them, the machine gun. You can press X to shoot to hit enemies from afar or blow up spiked bombs. It doesn't do that much damage, but if you want to cheese enemies, it's perfect for that, and you'll be doing that a lot in this game. After a very slow block ride, we end up near a giant tree. Inside of this tree we meet Olmi, who wants to kill Rodea for being a traitor. Rodea doesn't know what he's talking about, but we fight anyway. The boss fights in this game are awful, with the exception of like maybe 2 of them. They all suck. Olmi is pretty easy. Honestly, you just spam the homing attack to break his shield and then hit him. Olmi leaves after you beat him, and we come across a crying child. His name is Tonio. He's also annoying. He came into this tree to find herbs for his sick sister, but failed because he's like 4. Rodea refuses to help because he's not the primary objective, but Ion manages to convince him by saying he has a heart, unlike other androids. This jogs some of Rodea's memories and restores some of the more human aspects back into Rodea. Well, ain't that sweet. We get the herbs and we leave. Chapter 3, we're on our way to the first Cronus Tower to destroy it. Ion's ship runs low on fuel, so we need to get some for her at the nearby oil plant. This level is pretty whatever, but I started running into some problems. So first is one of the upgrades I got. I think it's called the Dolphin Maneuver. What it does, it allows Rodea to curve a little bit during flight. It's supposed to help go around platforms, which sounds useful because you can't turn mid-flight, but like 90% of the time, it causes more harm than help. That damn little curve would just get me trapped under platforms, ruining the timing of certain attacks, pushes me into a hazard, and wastes a bit of fuel, causing me to fall. You could say this is my fault for buying a crappy upgrade, but you need to buy it to get the other ones, and you can't disable it, so I was stuck with it forever. Next is the lock-on. It's not a huge issue yet, but it was annoying later on. You use the reticle to point at something to lock onto it, but I found it to be very unreliable at times. Sometimes it would just not lock onto the enemy, but instead a piece of land in the background. And that piece of land is sometimes like 50 miles in the background. How does that even happen? Lastly is Ion herself. She talks constantly throughout the levels. Every time you collect something, kill an enemy, take damage, deal damage, fly, don't fly, collect a part, pick up health, light speed dash, she never shuts up. Thankfully, you can turn her off in the options menu so you don't have to hear her spout the same few phrases over and over again. Well, enough complaining for now, let's get back to the level. After collecting all of the oil cans and avoiding these dumbass kamikaze planes which are impossible to kill, we make it back to Ion, who's surrounded by a giant flying shark. He's not hard to kill, you just gotta break the launchers on his wings. Chapter 4 isn't anything special. We get some new enemies, we get a quick look at these dash pads we can't use yet, these purple electric fields which can hurt you if you touch them, and switches. You usually need to activate all of the switches at once to open something. It's never one lone switch. At the end, we save Ion's village from a bunch of Naga soldiers. Chapter 5 is our first area boss, a giant steel titan named Dio Gorum. I think I pronounced that right. Each boss follows the same formula. They have a glowing weak spot you need to hit, which then reveals a bunch of pink weak spots, which will damage the boss. You break all of them to win. It's not a creative solution to beat a boss, but it all depends on how you use it. Are these boss fights any good? Well, I said earlier most of them suck, and this is no exception. This fight isn't hard, it's just so slow. It's because this guy is huge and flying up to him takes a long time. Luckily, there is a launch star that flings you into the air, but it only helps so much. Another issue came up during this fight, the camera. The camera is really slow, so if you miss your target or an enemy is behind you, turning around is going to take a while. The solution would be to increase the camera speed in the options, right? There is no option for such a thing. Again, it's more obnoxious later on, but after a few hits he goes down and the tower loses power. 1 down, 3 to go. Chapter 6 through 11 takes place in a new desert area. The desert isn't the most exciting level theme, unless it's Serious Sam, but maybe it'll be fun. The first 5 levels weren't that exciting, but hopefully they introduce things that'll be cool. At the start of Chapter 6, Ion gives us the slide gear, which can be used to pass electric barriers and use those dash pads. I rarely use this, so I don't have anything to say about it. There's a lot more combat this time around, and it just isn't very fun. The homing attack is fine for the most part, but you bounce so far away after you hit an enemy that a follow-up attack is hard to do unless you spam the lock-on. Some enemies also shoot projectiles, and every time they appear it plays a really annoying and loud alert sound. so we can't progress further due to the sandstorm. So we have to destroy 5 sandstorm machines. Sure, I guess. The machines are surrounded by the annoying kamikaze planes and giant robotic crabs. The crabs suck because you need to spam the homing attack lock-on combo to kill them quickly, or else you'll get spammed with projectiles. After destroying all of the machines, we can move on. Chapter 7 is another pretty mediocre level. There's a part where you need to cross a giant gap by landing on poles, but some of them are just placed far enough away where you can't lock onto them. We also find an octopus. It's not a real one, just something that looks like one. Basically, you shoot it to get it to rise up, and you can fly with it to reach higher ground by wall kicking off of it. After a purple electric trap, which then leads to a giant mech crab, we arrive in an arena which is booby-trapped. Ion informs us that the pillars that rose from the ground need to be blue to disarm it. She knows this because her grandfather took his wife here for a date. I don't know why he thought a booby-trapped broken down arena was a good makeout spot, but whatever stiffens you up, I guess. After disarming the trap, Olmi appears again for another fight. His real name is Orthos, by the way. Same as the first fight, and he goes down pretty easily. Olmi, I guess, dies here, but before he does, he comments on our cool name, which was given to Rodea by her. Her being the princess, if you couldn't guess. Chapter 8 introduces the sandworms that are very annoying to fight and deal a bunch of damage. When they start rolling, you can't hurt them, and they roll for like 5 hours before they stop. The main objective of this stage is to collect a bunch of materials to make bombs to blow up another enemy base. You need red coconuts, bomb rocks, and volt capsules. You get the coconuts from trees, the bomb rocks by breaking open big rocks, and the volt capsules by killing these flying little drones. It's not very exciting in all honesty, it's just so very slow. I haven't really gotten any materials to increase my base speed past level 2 yet, so it feels very long. Well, after getting all of the materials, we head inside the base and start planting the bombs. However, the bombs start a countdown before Rodea could leave, so we need to escape before they detonate. You have plenty of time to escape, so there's no real rush. The factory explodes and everyone is okay. Except the enemies, of course. Those fools are dead. Chapter 9 starts fine enough, I guess, but halfway through we get the worst stage gimmick and the worst thing in this entire game. Wind. Wind is used in other games to mess with movement, either having to go against it or ride with the wind. A lot of games use it well and get creative with it. This game doesn't. The wind in this game is just completely random. Sometimes it'll blow in one direction for a while, or it'll blow in a bunch of other random directions every few seconds. It's so unpredictable most of the time. Whether you're flying or just walking on the ground, it affects you. Even if you're behind a wall, it still hits you. The only way to go against the wind is by using the homing attack, which isn't something I like. Especially during flight because again, the homing attack drains your flight meter, and since the wind is so sporadic, most of the time I would just die because my fuel was too low. You also need to worry about enemies and capsules too that you might accidentally home into when you don't want to. It's just so frustrating to deal with. Something like this is hard to describe when you don't sit there and play it for yourself to experience how awful it is. It's not the last time we see wind, sadly. The rest of the stage is whatever, we make it to the second Kronos Tower. Chapter 10 we fight another boss, Belhemius, a giant floating sand dragon who is a better boss than the first guy, but not by much. He follows the same hit the blue light to reveal pink light thing that the first boss has. Now when you hit the light this time, you get a QTE where you need to homing attack his mouth before you can do any real damage. It's an okay fight and the first instance of me actually enjoying something in this game. After the fight we get a glimpse of another android. Ooh, foreshadowing. Chapter 11, Ion gets kidnapped so we need to rescue her. We also get introduced to Tonio's sister Sonia and 2 other characters I don't remember the name of, nor do I really care. This stage is also not very interesting like every other level I've played so far. The wind is back for a little section which got me killed because I tried to kill this tank turtle thing and I ran out of fuel and it just... fuck! Chapter 12, it opens up with some wind. Great. We even get a section where we need to kill a bunch of fast flying enemies in the wind. Needless to say, it's much harder because the wind is a load of shit. After that, we make our way through a volcano and end up near where Ion is being held. She's inside one of these ships and we need to get a key to free her. While on the hunt, Ion's grandfather doesn't shut the fuck up and is so worried about Ion. Even Rodea gets annoyed with him. I even get more annoyed because I have to hear him multiple times if I die. His voice actor is so obnoxious, I hate listening to him speak words. The Japanese voice acting is probably more tolerable to listen to. We get the key from a giant mech crab and head back, but Ion is not here anymore and was kidnapped again by that red android we saw earlier. Chapter 13, this red android, named Rylus, will give us back Ion if we give him the other half of the Key of Time. Rodea still has some memory loss, but gets some of it back when the key is mentioned. Obviously we're not giving him the keys, so it's time to fight. This fight sucks. It's pretty similar to the Orthos fight, except we only have the blimp to stand on. Rylus attacks with a horizontal and vertical slashes, which I couldn't dodge. I'll blame myself for that because you can use the Y button to dodge. It's not super reliable because you might fall straight down accidentally, but the real issue with this fight is, you guessed it, the fucking wind. I just hate dealing with the wind. Stop putting it in every level now, it's not fun. Rylus dies, I guess, and there's more level to beat. Traveling through an even bigger volcano seems like fun, but it just isn't. It's just so slow and feels way too similar to the previous levels. Nothing exciting happens. Chapter 14, Ion gives us our final new gadget, the lock-on gear. You can target up to 3 enemies at once and launch yourself into them. It seems useful on the surface, but much like the speed boots, I never used it. I only used it twice for the 2 puzzles it's required for. The problem with the lock-on gear is that when you launch into the attack, Rodea flies in the opposite direction after the first hit, and it feels really awkward to use. After this, we need to destroy 3 searchlights and grab 3 keycards from them. This allows us to enter another base where we get swarmed by a bunch of robots. After that, we get a really annoying switch puzzle. All you need to do is hit 1 switch to remove the electric field around 3 other switches. The 3 switches need to be activated at once, so you need to use the lock-on gear. The electric field doesn't stay down for very long, so you need to be quick. It sounds fine, but it's incredibly frustrating because the wind! Stop with the goddamn wind, please. I hate dealing with it. Chapter 15, another boss, Zolandark, the giant mech phoenix. Now that sounds pretty badass, but the fight is so jank. Think of this guy as a dollar store version of the giant bird Colossus from Shadow of the Colossus. So first you need to homing attack his head to reveal his weak points, of course. Then you have to ride onto his back to hit those weak points. This is very awkward to do because he keeps moving and you keep bouncing around, so you need to keep spamming the homing attack to keep up with him. If you fall off, there's a little QTE to get back on, but sometimes it just straight up kills you. I really don't know how you get back onto the bird. I just kept spamming the homing attack and was able to kick off his body to regain my fuel. This is probably the most awkward fight in the game. It could have been cool, but too bad it was riddled with jank. Chapter 16, the cutscene here is kinda goofy. Sonia admits to accidentally luring Rylus to their village, but the way she tells it is through this preschooler drawing flashback. I gotta admit, it did get a chuckle out of me. The levels now are snowy, more or less just an aesthetic change. No wacky ice physics or anything like that. Granted, that wouldn't work considering you're flying most of the time. This level introduces a very tough enemy, the snow crabs. They are fast and deal a lot of damage. It's a real shame I still can't upgrade Rodea's base stats because I haven't gotten the parts I needed to upgrade him. Certain enemies drop certain parts, but the ones I need are from enemies that either never appear or rarely drop what I want. I think they want you to grind for this crap. But I'm not doing that. First off, I hate every level, and second, the load times aren't exactly short. Also in this level, I was fighting one of the crabs and somehow got flung extremely far away and I died. I would say this is funny, but I'm already having a bad time playing through this, so I was more frustrated than anything. The end of this stage, we need to scale up this giant mountain to turn off blizzard machines. This would be fine, but can you guess? The wind ruins it. The wind could have worked here blowing you up the mountain, but no. It does whatever it wants. Chapter 17. A majority of this level isn't very amazing. There's a part where you need to scale a frozen waterfall which takes a very long time. Then you need to beat a giant crab to drop an icicle on top of a switch to stop the wind from pushing you back on a certain path. At least the wind in this stage was kept to a minimum. We have another android fight at the end of this stage with Kelvis, Rodea's sister. This fight was annoying at first because she teleports around the arena like she's a curvy boss. She attacks by shooting you or launching this giant crystal ball which can disable your homing attack. If you keep attacking the crystal ball before it explodes, you can break it and hit Kelvis. You need to be patient with this fight and only attack after she attacks because she leaves herself open after each attack. I wish I could have upgraded my stats because this fight took a long time because I can only take like 2 hits and deal very little damage. Chapter 18, I honestly don't have much to say about this one. It's one of the better levels compared to the past 10 levels, but it's still not very fun. You blow up another enemy base at the end of this stage. Again. Chapter 19, the beginning has this giant tower with a bunch of switches. You need to hit all of them to proceed. There is wind here, but in this instance, it's not awful. It makes this section harder, but not to a point where it's frustrating. Good job, wind. You don't suck for once. We make our way to another base where we need to blow up an airship. Once all 3 bombs are planted, we try to get away, but Kelvis comes back to stop us. The fight is mostly the same as the first one. She does have this giant shockwave attack that damages you now, and the fight is under a 4-minute time limit. I was able to beat her just by walking around and waiting for an opening. There's probably a faster way of doing this, but I couldn't be bothered to figure out a new plan. Kelvis dies, I guess. A lot of guessing if these guys die or not. It's never really shown if they did or not. And we blow up the ship. It's time to move on to the final Kronos Tower. Chapter 20 houses the final tower boss, Odeon. This boss is a lot less jank and easier compared to the Phoenix. I wouldn't call him good or anything like that. You need to hit his head and then pop his shoulders to deal damage. If you get too close, flying up is a pain in the ass because you'll clip into him and take damage. Or for some reason you'll activate your fast fall even though you didn't press down, but it still activates for some reason. The final hit needs to be done by dropping a stalactite on his head because his head is covered in a hard crystal. It's not hard to do, it just takes a very long time to reach the top. Again, I can't upgrade my speed because I can't find any materials. He's not a hard boss, so it's not that big of a deal. At the end, Rodea gets all of his memories back and remembers the promise he made to Princess Cecilia. And it seems like it's over. We stopped all 4 of the towers and it's time to leave. Well, not yet because this other android appears and steals the other half of the key. His name is Valgus. He had the other piece with him and combined both of them together. He explains to Rodea the key of time is used to stop and fix Garuda's position above the Naga Empire. Since Cecilia stole the key, Giardo couldn't trap Garuda into place so the invasion didn't work. Yeah, Garuda is a moving continent, by the way. The key also has another purpose. Valgus takes the key and shoves it into Rodea's chest, which in turn opens a rift in the sky, which apparently leads 1,000 years into the past. Okay. The Naga Empire was strong back then, so this rift is being used for an easy invasion. Valgus teases us, saying if we wanted to stop Giardo, go back in time ourselves to stop him. Why is the plot getting a lot more interesting now? Chapter 21, the final stretch. We successfully made it back in time and watched Cecilia fall to her death before Rodea could save her. Bummer, dude. We also meet Giardo in the flesh here. He mocks Rodea for not being able to save Cecilia again, but Rodea is going to kick this guy's ass no matter what because his heart is a lot stronger than it used to be. Also, Ion followed us into the rift because we're in this together and she's the only one who could fix us. This level is completely different from any other ones because it's an on-rail shooter. Yeah, this is kind of strange to see this late into the game, but for the first time in this whole game, I actually liked this level. Sure, it's not amazing, but it was fun. All you need to do is move and shoot and avoid walls that block your path. It only took until the 21st level for me to like something in this game, out of 25 levels. Chapter 22, we made it to the base of the Naga Tower and we need to scale it to reach Giardo. This level we get transported into this space area and it looks really cool. I just like space so I might be biased here, but strangely enough, this is also another level that I actually enjoyed. I like the platforming challenges here, the way enemies were laid out flowed really well, and there wasn't a ton of annoying bullshit. In fact, these last few levels don't even have the dumb wind gimmick. The dialogue between characters here is also a lot better in my opinion. It wasn't bad before, but for some reason I'm way more engaged. I even got materials so I can upgrade Rodea past level 2. That's great actually, but what the hell is going on here? How come the past 15 levels were complete dog shit and a pain to play through but became actually enjoyable for a bit? This is so bizarre. Chapter 23 is similar to the last level. It's not as good, but still has some decent challenges. The beginning has you bounce off these mirror enemies to reach the other side. You actually need to use the air dodge to reach the next target. It can be pretty tough, but thankfully they don't ruin it with wind. There's a part where blocks dip into electric field, which is kinda dumb, but it's tolerable. I like the end of this stage as well. You need to attack flying sharks to cross over to reach the goal. Even if you mess up, there are small platforms at the bottom to help catch you. You don't have to be perfect with this. Chapter 24. It's time to fight Gyardo. Gyardo isn't a hard or complex fight. He has 3 attacks. His first attack is summoning this electric box, which will close into you if you stand into it. His second attack is giving you the suck. If you get caught in it, you get slammed over and over. If you stay far away and roll, you can avoid it. His last attack is summoning a giant Gatling gun. That's metal as fuck. After he finishes this attack, it's your chance to attack him. And that's the loop for this entire fight. It's not a great fight, but it's honestly better than most of the fights in this game. Well, after you beat Gyardo, you have another fight with Valgus. He's very similar to the other android fights, but has some thought put into it. All you need to do is break his shield and hit him. He'll summon lasers and turn himself into a twister. You just gotta wait for an opening and attack. It's pretty easy, but it's fun. After some dying words from Valgus, Garuda is now saved from both him and Gyardo. So now it's time to go home. Well, not yet. We still have chapter 25 where we see this giant mechanical monster. This monster is actually Gyardo, his weird corrupted form. This serves as the true final boss. This fight can be a bit tough, only because there isn't a whole lot of ground to bounce off of, and that they're very far apart from each other. You need to homing attack into Gyardo's tentacles that have a red light flashing. Once you break enough tentacles, Gyardo will activate his back vacuum and suck you into it to try and grind you up. In here you need to break all flashing lights in order to escape. You get slowly sucked in and the area is coated in electricity, so you need to be careful. Luckily the wind isn't very strong here, so it's not annoying. After you break all of the lights, the vacuum breaks and you repeat this 2 more times. For the first time ever in this game, the later phases actually get harder. There are more tentacles to hit. Gyardo will actually wrap around certain towers to prevent you from bouncing off of them. He'll even have a giant laser to prevent you from flying too low. It's actually a pretty good fight. It's a real shame I didn't get a single flight speed upgrade. It was still at level 2 here. Health and damage is more important in my opinion. You get this pretty epic final hit on Gyardo too, where you need to hit his chest while avoiding lasers and bouncing off of rocks. Very cool, albeit the lasers have a very weird hitbox. After you beat Gyardo, Rodea tells Ion to leave him behind because he's the only one who can close up the R-Gate to prevent any further destruction from the Empire. Ion doesn't want to leave him behind, but after a while she gets forcefully pulled back into the rift. We get another text scroll saying Rodea and Cecilia are still alive. Rodea tells Cecilia about the journey he went on, and credits. We get a post-credits scene where Ion finds and repairs Rodea 1,000 years later. He even still remembers her. Even the other androids were fixed up. Well, at least it ends on a happy note. Well, that was my playthrough of Rodea the Sky Soldier. Man, this game was quite the experience. Not a very pleasant experience, but let's save that for the final ranking. So for gameplay, I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5. I like the idea of this game. They took nights into dreams and made it a fully 3D game. The concept could have worked great, but this game just has so many issues that it just doesn't feel right. The controls aren't bad. They take some time getting used to. The way Rodea moves and reacts to things makes the controls seem much worse because most actions you do don't play out the way you want them to. It's frustrating because you want to do one thing, but you'll somehow manage to go after something else completely different, especially during combat. The levels weren't very good and felt way too similar to each other. The wind gimmick was complete trash and made each level it was in much worse. The upgrade system is a decent idea, but for a majority of the game I couldn't upgrade Rodea and you're kind of forced to grind to get parts. The bosses had a neat concept but were ruined to either being completely incompetent or boring. It's not until the final 5 levels where the game was actually fun and everything felt better, but you need to slog through 20 levels to get to that point. Presentation gets a 2 out of 5. The story was fine. I honestly didn't think too much of it for most of the game. The ending levels brought it more into light, which made it more interesting, but it's still not an amazing story, but it's okay for what it is. The music was also alright too. It's nothing memorable, but it sounds pleasant. But moving on to the negatives, the graphics are pretty bad. This came out in 2015 on the Wii U and looks like a game that came out on the Dreamcast back in 2001. It looks pretty awful, but what makes it worse is that the game has major slowdown issues. If there's just too much on screen, the game chugs along so slowly, making every level feel like a marathon. The pre-rendered cutscenes look awful, and the in-game cutscenes are just two cutouts of the characters. It's lazy. The characters are kind of annoying and forgettable. Rodea is fine and Ion is okay, but everyone else you can replace with anyone and nothing will change, with the exception of the villain, I guess. The voice acting is also pretty bad too. It's on the same level as Sonic Adventure 2. The fun factor I'll give a 1.5 out of 5. I would have ranked it much lower, but those last 5 stages saved it from a really crappy grade. Every level just wasn't that exciting to look at or play. The broken mechanics and the dumb gimmicks made me hate every level. It doesn't help these levels are quite lengthy too, rather than a quick 5-minute stage or something like that. There's a lot of filler in certain stages which can be excluded in all honesty. You could have just had really small, fun levels. And for replayability, I'll give it a 1 out of 5. Now you can replay these stages to get a better score, and there are even some medals to collect to unlock other extra features. But it just isn't worth it. The levels take a while to finish, the loading is long, and you still need to deal with cutscenes. It just isn't a good time. I can't see myself playing this game again, but I'll give credit where it's due, I guess. So the final score for Rodea the Sky Soldier is a 1.75 out of 5. Yeah, I did not enjoy this game, sorry to say. Now to be fair for a bit, this game has 3 different versions. The 2 other ones are on the Wii and 3DS. The Wii version is apparently far superior to the Wii U version. You could only get this version if you bought the Wii U version that came with the bonus disc. Now I actually saw footage of the Wii version and it looks miles better than the Wii U port. It looks and plays much faster. The 3DS version looks like the Wii U version, but I heard it's a little bit better. So if you do want to try this game out, I recommend you get the Wii version. Avoid the Wii U version at all costs because it's so jank and crap. But enough about Rodea. Let's go back to the wheel and see what we get next. Okay, back at the wheel again. Now, if I'm predicting something, I played a pretty jank game that was a brainchild of a very well-known developer, and it sucked. So I'm predicting that I'm going to get Mighty Number 9. Because that's in the same boat. So let's see if I get Mighty Number 9. I don't want it, but here we go. No Mighty Number 9. Audio's really messed up. Shakedown Hawaii. I never played this game before, so this will be interesting.